Professor Ethan Reed, an astrophysicist, recently discovered a new asteroid. However, during an interview, his cold yet strikingly handsome appearance unexpectedly brought him viral fame. The focus of public discussion shifted from the asteroid to his almost otherworldly face. When it was revealed that the asteroid was named after his beloved, the internet erupted in excitement. While praising this divine love, netizens eagerly speculated about who and might be. I held my phone, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of my lips. The video continued to play, reaching the final question. The reporter smiled as she asked Professor Reed, "Do you have anything you'd like to say to your beloved?" And Ethan froze for a moment, his pitch-black eyes trembling slightly. "Happy wedding anniversary," he said, his voice calm but laced with a faint, almost imperceptible despair that bordered on collapse. I froze in place. "Wedding anniversary?" Beside me, my friend Brooke nudged me playfully. "Wow, Emily, your Ethan might seem all aloof, but who knew he's actually so romantic? Treating your anniversary like it's a second honeymoon. How sweet. Is that what this is?" Watching Ethan's tender gaze in the video, my face flushed red. I had spent 10 years with Ethan, watching as he transformed from a withdrawn, despondent music student into the refined, charismatic professor he was today. A decade ago, he transferred to my high school and became my desk mate. Back then, he had porcelain pale skin and delicate features that resembled a painting, but his gaze was always impatient whenever it landed on me. Now, he had named an asteroid after me. When speaking of his beloved, his once cold expression was tinged with love and tenderness. Today was our first wedding anniversary. Curling up on the couch, I rested a hand on my stomach, preparing to tell him as soon as he got home that I was pregnant. Instead, what I received was news of Ethan's death. He had jumped from the 18th floor, clutching a piece of paper tightly in his hand. Death is merely a return to the universe. Millions of years from now, we will meet again among the stars. With my friend Quinn's support, I arranged Ethan's funeral. He had left a will, donating all his assets to charity. For reasons I couldn't explain, I felt strangely calm in the days that followed, watching Quinn, her eyes swollen from crying, trying to comfort me even though she had always loathed Ethan. I almost wanted to laugh. After the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer. "Mrs. Reed, there's a villa under Mr. Reed's name that wasn't included in the donated assets. You're welcome to come handle it whenever you're ready." The villa was located in the southern suburbs. When I pushed open the door, I was stunned into silence by what I saw. The main hall was filled with paintings, sketched roughly and chaotically, as if drawn by an amateur. Yet, despite their crude lines, the person depicted in each painting seemed vividly alive, brought to life by the overwhelming love infused in every stroke. It was Anna Carter, the high school beauty. In 10 years, I had never once heard Ethan mention her name. I had no idea he had hidden his feelings for her so deeply. Staggering forward, I steadied myself against a table. On it were several amber-encased objects: a piece of candy, a dried flower, a fragment of rhinestone nail polish. The amber was smooth, as though it had been handled often. These were things Anna had casually discarded, yet Ethan had cherished them as treasures. Meanwhile, the wedding ring I had chosen for him lay forgotten in a dried-up paint box. A sharp pain gripped my chest as tears began to stream uncontrollably down my face. I sat down and opened the notebook on the desk, unable to stop myself. Inside, I found records of Ethan's 10-year-long unrequited love. On his first day after transferring, he had received a piece of candy and a kind smile from Anna, who sat in front of him. To him, it was as if a ray of sunlight had pierced through the darkness of his world. For a boy haunted by domestic violence and bullying, it was the first pure kindness he had ever known. And he fell, irrevocably. He wanted to confine her, possess her, and make her smile only for him. Yet he couldn't bear to drag someone so radiant into the shadows of his own life. No, it was never me. It had always been her. It was his wedding gift for her. I flipped through the pages from beginning to end. Mentions of me were scarce and dismissive. My new deskmate meddles too much. Very annoying. Getting married was a mistake, but I'll take responsibility for her. The journal was filled with trivial details. How he brought me breakfast because he worried about my low blood sugar. how I scared off bullies for him, and how I held his hand and pulled him out of the fire his father had started. Yet none of these memories held any weight for him. Not a word about the years I spent by his side, comforting him. What lingered in his heart was the image of Anna's carefree, radiant smile. Every word pierced me like a needle. I clenched my fists tightly, breathing deeply, but the faint scent of cedar lingering in the air, a scent that reminded me of him, made me nauseous. Some people are just vile, unworthy of redemption, unworthy of love. I placed a hand on my stomach. He didn't deserve the child I carried. As I stood up, a sudden noise came from the door. Two figures pushed their way in. It was Keith and Anna. Keith's eyes were red, his voice hoarse as he spoke. This villa was left for you by Ethan. You were the only light in his life. Back when he was on the verge of giving up, it was your photo that kept him going. Anna stood frozen in place, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. He didn't have to go to class after being accepted into college, but he kept going every day just to see you. Keith's words trailed off as he finally noticed me standing behind the bookshelf. His expression shifted, his brows furrowing in disgust. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. Storming toward me, he shoved me hard, and I stumbled back, barely catching myself as pain shot through my lower abdomen. "Get out!" Keith shouted. "Don't you dare sully the only place Ethan held dear. If it weren't for you clinging to him, he wouldn't have ended up like this." Regaining my footing, I slapped him hard across the face. "How is this my fault?" I snapped. "I never forced him to date me or marry me. If he missed out on Anna, it was because he was too cowardly and pathetic to make a move." Before Keith could respond, Anna's shaky voice broke through. "Did he not get my letter?" Both Keith and I froze. "What did you say?" Keith asked, his voice trembling. "Before the college entrance exams, I left a love letter on his desk," Anna admitted, her voice thick with regret. "But he never replied." Her lips curved into a bitter smile as her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resentment. She turned to me, her gaze sharp. "It was you, wasn't it? You were jealous of me. You threw the letter away. You're the reason we missed out on 10 years together. And now it's too late." I had no idea what she was talking about, but Keith believed her. "You venomous woman," he roared, charging at me. My stomach slammed into the edge of the table, a searing pain spreading through me. I felt the warmth of blood seeping out, and my vision went black as I collapsed to the floor. When I opened my eyes again, I was holding a textbook, standing in front of the supply room, wearing a school uniform. Inside, a young Ethan leaned casually against the wall, his dark hair falling over his forehead. He looked at me with a hint of confusion in his gaze. Across from him sat Nate, his usual laid-back demeanor intact, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Worried about him?" Nate teased, raising an eyebrow as his lazy smile widened. "I'm just here to have a little chat." The book in my hands felt solid, tangible, nothing like a dream. A cold chill swept over me, and a wave of hatred surged up. The book fell from my hands with a loud thud. Without a word, I stepped forward, closed the door, and turned to leave. Behind me, I heard the door being flung open, and Ethan rushed past me like a gust of wind, leaving only the sight of his hurried figure. "What's he running for?" "Ethan, why didn't you sign up for any events at the sports meet?" Nate Shaw picked up the book I had accidentally dropped and handed it to me casually. "No problem," he said, nonchalantly. A sense of unease settled over me as I quickened my pace to follow Ethan. At the classroom door, I saw him staring blankly inside, his gaze fixed on Anna Carter, who was laughing and playfully bantering with her desk mate. The golden hues of the setting sun streamed in, casting a soft glow around his figure. His expression was a mixture of tenderness and disbelief, as if he were caught in a dream too beautiful to wake from. My heart sank. His demeanor was no longer that of the brooding teenager from the past, but instead resembled the refined professor he would become 10 years later. Ethan had been reborn, too. What kind of madness is this? Nate, oblivious to Ethan's behavior, patted him on the shoulder and pushed past him into the classroom. "Class is about to start. Don't just stand there." I walked to my seat, guided by the memories of my previous life. The next period was self-study, and the classroom was quiet as my classmates focused on their work. I absent-mindedly flipped through an exercise book, staring at the neat, immature handwriting on the pages. This was my second chance at life, and I swore to myself that I wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past. My mind gradually cleared, and a calm resolve replaced the swirling emotions. Since Ethan had also been reborn, he probably didn't want anything to do with me anymore. Fine by me. This time, we could live our lives separately. If he wanted to destroy himself, so be it. I'd stay far away from him, far enough that when he died again, his blood wouldn't splash on me. Disgusting. As I was lost in thought, Ethan's cold voice cut through the air. Emily, give me your English notes. I looked up, startled. What? His expression was indifferent, his tone distant. It seemed he hadn't noticed that my behavior differed from what it had been in our past life. Then again, why would he? His mind was full of Anna Carter. He'd already forgotten everything I had done for him back then. Anna turned around, her tone apologetic. I'm sorry, Emily. I was just asking Ethan if I could borrow his notes, but he said your English is better. So he came to you instead. Her smile was sweet and disarming, the kind that naturally put people at ease. Too bad it didn't work on me. I had no intention of lending her anything. No, I said flatly. Anna's smile froze for a moment, and her desk mate, Quinn Taylor, chimed in, clearly irritated. Emily, as class president, isn't it your responsibility to help your classmates? Why are you acting like lending a notebook is such a big deal? Anna asked you because she respects you, so stop being stingy. Her voice was loud enough to draw the attention of the entire class. Anna's expression turned to one of disappointment, but her gaze carried a subtle hint of contempt. Next to me, Brooke, who was munching on a spicy snack, rolled her eyes before jumping to my defense. Quit the moral high ground crap. Emily worked hard to put those notes together. Why should she hand them over to you ungrateful lot? Just because your grades suck doesn't mean you're entitled to her help. The tension escalated as Brooke and Quinn prepared to argue further. Sensing the brewing conflict, Ethan quickly intervened. That's enough. He then turned to me, his tone softening, calm but earnest. Emily, Anna struggles with English. Without better grades, she won't be able to apply to her dream school, a 4 university. I stared at him, feeling a twinge of bitterness. He didn't need to elaborate. I already knew what he was thinking. In our past life, Ethan had attended college in the same city as Anna. He was already planning their future together. Even in this brief span of time since being reborn, I had never been treated this seriously by Ethan before. In the first month of our marriage, he moved to a distant city for a teaching position, coming home only once every few months and never calling me unless I initiated it. It wasn't that he didn't know how to care. It was simply that he didn't love me. Lowering my eyes, I felt the weight of my wasted 10 years pressing down on me. Ethan, however, seemed to misinterpret my silence as hesitation. Didn't you always want me to come over for dinner at your house? He said, as if something suddenly occurred to him. His lips curled into a knowing smile, his eyes glowing with a confidence that reminded me of blooming peach blossoms. Help Anna improve her English grades, and I'll come to your house for dinner once a month. His tone was condescending, as if he were granting me a rare privilege. How had he, even after being reborn, forgotten how to speak to people like a decent human being? I couldn't hold back any longer and raised my head to meet his gaze. What kind of pathetic person do you think I am? Why should I be the one to endure all this pain? Ethan's expression froze for a moment, and he opened his mouth as if to say something, but before he could, the homeroom teacher walked into the classroom with his ever-present thermos in hand. He announced that applications for the university-sponsored entrance exams were now open. In my previous life, Ethan had been admitted to T University through these exams, while I hadn't even participated. This time, both of us raised our hands at the same time. Ethan glanced at me with a flicker of surprise, clearly not understanding why I had chosen differently in this life. Emily, are you signing up too? Anna asked softly, her voice tinged with doubt, as if mocking my overreach. People need to understand their limits. If you work hard enough, you might get into a decent college. But compared to Ethan, you're still far behind. Taking this exam would just waste your time. Or, are you only doing this to catch someone's attention? She cast a glance at Ethan, who was focused on the teacher. her insinuation unmistakable. What made her so sure I couldn't succeed? In my previous life, I hadn't taken the exam because I didn't want to compete with Ethan for the spot. His family was struggling financially, and being admitted through this program would have given him more time to work and earn money for college expenses. But what did he do after being admitted? He wasted his days at school, just to catch another glimpse of Anna. The memory filled me with a quiet determination, and I responded coldly, "How is this any of your business? Shouldn't someone like you, who's at the bottom of the class, focus on improving their own grades instead of worrying about mine?" Anna's eyes instantly reddened with tears, seeing his beloved being criticized. Ethan, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "Apologize to Anna right now. She was only trying to give you advice. Don't be so ungrateful. And if you're trying to get my attention, there's no need to use such a ridiculous approach. Don't make such childish and brainless decisions. Emily." His voice was icy, and his words stung with condescension. I ignored him and raised my hand to address the homeroom teacher, who had been watching the exchange unfold. "Teacher, I'd like to request a seat change. There's a dog barking nearby, and it's distracting me from my studies." Ethan's face darkened, his eyes fixed coldly on me. The teacher hesitated but ultimately agreed. After class, I moved to the seat next to Nate Shaw, who occupied the last row and was known for sleeping through most lessons. No one dared to disturb him there, and the quiet suited me perfectly. I packed my things, satisfied with my new spot. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Anna leaning back slightly, her long black hair draped over Ethan's desk. He sat quietly, his head lowered as he stared at her hair for a moment. His fingers twitched, and he gently picked up a strand, his movements restrained yet reverent. I rolled my eyes. On the first night of our marriage, Ethan had retreated to the guest room because one of my hairs had fallen onto his pillow and he found it disgusting. Did he really think his so-called pure goddess was as spotless as he imagined? He truly had no idea. That day was surprisingly pleasant for me. After school, the homeroom teacher asked me to stay and help grade some papers. So it was almost dark by the time I got back to my neighborhood. A group of women walking their dogs were chatting nearby. "Did you hear? That lunatic finally got arrested. His son called the police after he beat him too badly. They've sent him to a psychiatric hospital." "I know. I even went to check on it. What a terrible thing. That poor kid. He looks so well behaved. How could anyone bring themselves to hit him like that?" I froze mid-step. Our family lived in Building 3, and the lunatic they were referring to was Ethan's father. In my past life, Ethan's father often went on violent rampages, leaving Ethan battered and bruised. I always kept a small first aid kit under my desk to treat his wounds. I'd suggested calling the police for him more than once, but he had always dismissed me, saying I was meddling. It seemed that in this life, he had chosen not to endure it any longer. As I walked a little further, I spotted Ethan curled up on a bench. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, the stark red making his pale face look even more sickly. The flickering light from a nearby street lamp highlighted his disheveled hair, swaying gently in the cold wind. Suddenly, our eyes met. His gaze was confused and helpless. I quickly looked away and kept walking, my face blank. "Emily," he called out, his voice breaking the silence. I stopped for a moment but didn't turn around. It was as if he realized something and quickly returned to his usual cold demeanor. "What are you doing here? What's wrong with this guy?" I thought, annoyed, finding him unlucky. Quickened my pace. Behind me, a low, mocking laugh sounded. "Don't think I don't know why you're here. You love swooping in as the savior, don't you? Offering a helping hand when others are at their lowest, thinking it'll make them fall for you. Let me tell you something, it doesn't work. In fact, I hate that fake kindness of yours the most." I stopped in my tracks, trembling with anger as the weight of his words sank in. So that's what he thought of me? My care and concern for him, my years of affection. He saw it all as condescension, as hypocrisy. 10 years wasted on someone who couldn't tell right from wrong. "You're wrong," I said, taking a deep breath to steady my voice. "I'm not here to save you." I strode toward him, lifted my right hand, and slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed sharply in the cold air. "I'm here to kick you while you're down. You ungrateful bastard." I spat, glaring at him with disdain before turning and walking away. Ethan remained rooted in place, stunned, as if he couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Since slapping that ingrate, I felt incredibly liberated, like even my chest feels lighter. At school, we maintained a mutual pretense of being strangers. Occasionally, I'd overhear bits and pieces about him and Anna Carter. He hand-copied hundreds of pages of notes for her. He got into a fight with some thugs outside school for her. He cycled over 10 miles to buy freshly made pastries just because she mentioned she liked them. Back then, if I'd asked him to get me a glass of water, he'd complain that I was being too demanding. True love, seems, makes all the difference. I felt nothing about it now. My heart was as still as water, though I was tempted to call him an idiot. I used to love Ethan, not just because of his stunning looks, but because I admired strength. I admired his intelligence, his clarity, his cold detachment, and his vulnerability. That tragic genius persona of his was what drew me in. But now, thinking about it, if I were to take his path, I wouldn't have done any worse than him. So, what was there to admire? After separating from Ethan, my life gradually fell into place. Quinn, tired of the chaos surrounding Ethan, also moved to the back row of the classroom and spent her days pestering me to explain problems to her. Nate, seeing my study materials for the T University entrance exam, inexplicably decided to stop sleeping during class and started studying with us. By the time of the monthly exam, he had improved by over 100 points. His parents were so thrilled that they enthusiastically invited Quinn and me over for dinner. At the table, Nate's mother warmly held my hand, expressing her desire to make me her goddaughter. Nate, however, immediately intervened, his hands in his pockets, his tone casual but firm. "Mom, if you want to do this, there are other ways." Pretending not to hear him, I kept my head down, playing with the little dog bouncing under the table. The dog was so adorable that I couldn't resist sneaking it a piece of chicken breast. Overjoyed, the dog performed 2 backflips in gratitude. Even dogs know how to show appreciation, unlike some people. As the exams drew near, I immersed myself in my study plan. Ethan gradually faded from my world. The next time I ran into him was at the entrance to the sports equipment room. The gym teacher had sent me to fetch basketballs for class. But as I approached, I saw him standing there, his head bowed, his eyes red at the corners, looking like a lost dog. Through the slightly ajar door, I could hear the voices of Anna Carter and her friends from inside. "Anna, you still dare to eat the stuff he gives you? His dad's a lunatic. Who knows what kind of diseases he might have?" One of her friends sneered. "Don't say that. What diseases?" Anna's voice was calm, almost indifferent. "It's genes. Look at his face. He's probably inherited some of that lunatic gene. But it doesn't matter. It's just for fun anyway." Her friend burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha. But he seems pretty serious about you. I heard he's working 3 jobs just to support you. How pathetic. What a fool. Just a little flirting. And he fell for it." Anna let out a derisive laugh. "Exactly. But don't say anything like that in front of him. Just play it cool. I'm not done playing with this little lunatic yet." I saw Ethan's hand tremble as he gripped the box of cake he had brought. Watching his so-called goddess fall from her pedestal must have been excruciating for him. Serves him right, I thought. Hearing Anna's words, I suddenly realized something. With her personality, it was likely that in our past life, she had never written that love letter to Ethan. She must have said it only to slander me and provoke him. I had no interest in their messy drama in this life, so I turned to leave. But Ethan grabbed my wrist tightly, refusing to let go. "Let go." I struggled, but he dragged me outside. In a frenzy, he pinned me to a corner, his eyes, usually cold and distant, now filled with hatred. "You're the one who spread the rumors about my dad, aren't you?" he snarled. "Are you satisfied now? Emily, you like me so much that you destroy my relationship with her just to get my attention." Furious, I raised my leg and kicked him away. 10 years of knowing each other. No matter the lack of love, there should have been some basic trust. But fortunately, I had long since stopped hoping for anything from him. I stared at him coldly. "Ethan, are you delusional? Wasn't it you who told everyone about your father on your first day here? And liking you? How thick-skinned are you to think that? Anna's right. You really are a fool. To my surprise, Ethan didn't retort. It was as if some deeply held belief inside him was crumbling bit by bit. He slid down the wall, finally collapsing onto the ground. I stood over him, looking down with an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. That feeling of watching someone you love fall apart in front of your eyes. I understood it well. It was the same way I had felt when I pushed open the door to that villa in my previous life. Life, seems, has a way of evening the score. Ethan sat there motionless, his head bowed, his messy hair swaying slightly in the dim light. His dull eyes stared blankly ahead, his face numb and detached, like a shattered masterpiece, beautiful yet utterly broken. I studied his expression of despair carefully, almost wanting to take a photo to save for bad days when I needed a laugh. Then, suddenly, he chuckled softly. The laughter grew louder, but tears streamed down his face as he laughed. Was he truly losing it? Through his near-broken voice, I heard him mutter, "I was wrong. I shouldn't have." In that moment, I understood. Ethan was a smart person. He must have noticed Anna's strange behavior long ago. But in our past life, he had poured so much passion into that fragile illusion of love that he chose to deceive himself. Now, the illusion had been shattered in the most brutal way possible, and he couldn't accept it. He couldn't bear the truth that he had sacrificed everything, including his life in the past, for someone like her. So, he pushed the blame onto me. I looked at Ethan, his reddened eyes filled with regret and despair, and let out a cold laugh. In both this life and the last, he was still that same coward. I had no desire to see any more of his madness. Without hesitation, I turned and walked away, leaving him to his laughter and tears. Unlike Ethan, I wasn't a fool. In this new life, I wouldn't waste my time on people who didn't deserve it or turn myself into a hollow shell. I had already persuaded my parents to invest in some promising new industries and had helped Quinn improve her grades significantly. In our past life, not getting into her dream college had been one of Quinn's biggest regrets. This time, she could make it. Everything was moving in the right direction. After that day, I heard that Ethan and Anna had a huge falling out, but it had nothing to do with me. The only connection to me was that Ethan no longer revolved around Anna. Instead, he buried himself in his studies. But why did it feel like he was competing with me? He had already taken this exam in our previous life and probably remembered some of the questions. To beat him, I had to work even harder. Both Quinn and Nate noticed the change in me, but neither of them mentioned it. Respecting my focus, on the day the exam ended, I walked out of the test room and into the soft afternoon light. The sunlight wasn't overwhelming, gently stretching across the pavement like a lazy cat napping in the afternoon. It was serene and beautiful. The test had gone smoothly, and for the first time in a long while, I let out a deep sigh of relief. Nate stood at the gate with Quinn, holding 3 cups of milk tea. He waved at me, his messy hair neatly tousled by the breeze. He looked natural and carefree, embodying the essence of youth. I quickened my pace to join them. He handed me a cup of milk tea, his usual casual demeanor replaced by a rare gentleness. Let's celebrate. My treat. After lunch, I spent the rest of the afternoon at the amusement park with them, laughing and playing to my heart's content. It had been so long since I had felt this carefree. Since my rebirth, I had been wound so tightly, but today, I finally let go. All my worries seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense of lightness. It was as if every dormant cell in my body had been reawakened. I felt alive again. In the days that followed, I surprisingly became the most laid-back one in our group. I was constantly sent on errands to get food for Quinn and Nate. One morning, Quinn loudly declared that he wanted beef noodle soup from the stall near the school's south gate. So, during lunch break, I dutifully went to fetch it. As I stepped out of the school gates, I brushed past a blonde-haired guy who looked oddly familiar. "Don't worry, babe," he said into his phone, swaggering down the street with 3 or 4 others in tow. "We taught that kid who bullied you a lesson he won't forget." Not far away, a black van idled at the curb. I suddenly remembered who that blonde-haired guy was. Anna's ex-boyfriend, the troublemaker who used to pick her up outside the school gates. Without much thought, I turned into a nearby alley, only to find Ethan lying next to a trash bin, his head covered in blood. "Oh, So he's the one they taught a lesson. Good job. Blondie sure lives up to his reputation. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if I was some sort of bad omen for Ethan. Why else would I always show up at the exact moment he was at his lowest? Just to witness his misery and laugh at it? I stood over him, watching his sorry state, then raised my leg, preparing to step over him and leave. But before I could, he reached out and grabbed my ankle with a vice-like grip. Still alive? What a pity. His eyes were unfocused, as if he couldn't distinguish between reality and a dream. Emily, it's you again. You've come to save me, he murmured weakly. His fingers, cold and sticky with blood, clung tightly to my ankle. The sensation made me uncomfortable, but no matter how I tugged, I couldn't break free. Frustrated, I bent down and began prying his fingers off one by one. As I did, his eyelashes fluttered, and he stared at me, his gaze filled with a sickening mix of longing and nostalgia. Emily, he said, his voice hoarse but determined. Stop playing hard to get. I'll give you a chance to save me. I was blind before, but now I finally understand. You're the only one who's ever truly cared for me. Let's stop this nonsense and get back together. Okay. I froze mid-motion, realizing he hadn't figured out that I had also been reborn. I'd never gone out of my way to hide it, but he had deluded himself into believing that I was still the same person who would stick by his side no matter what. Every change in my behavior, he interpreted as a calculated ploy to win his attention. His self-confidence was truly something to behold. Out of patience, I stood up and stomped on his hand, which was still reaching for my ankle. He let out a sharp cry of pain, cold sweat breaking out on his pale forehead. If you can't speak like a human being, I said, grinding my heel into his hand, then don't expect me to treat you like one. Ethan, you've been given a second chance at life. Yet you haven't learned a single thing. His pupils contracted, and his face turned even paler. Emily, wait, you also. But I didn't let him finish. Pulling my foot away, I turned and walked off, leaving him behind in the filthy alley. That evening, I stayed late at school to help the homeroom teacher grade assignments. By the time I headed home, it had started to rain. The drizzle was fine and dense, soaking the air with the damp, salty smell that made me inexplicably restless. As I approached my building, I noticed a figure standing outside my window. I lived on the first floor, and the person stood motionless in the rain, staring intently at my home. Summoning my courage, I stepped closer and saw that it was Ethan. What bad luck. Through the rain, I could make out the sorrow in his eyes, a grief so heavy it seemed to blend with the downpour. When he saw me, he instinctively took a step forward but froze when he noticed the disgust on my face. Emily, I'm sorry, he said, his voice cracking as raindrops fell on him, each one seeming to chip away at his pride. Finally, after all this time, he offered an apology, but I no longer cared. Gripping the handle of my umbrella tightly, I replied coldly, "Got it. Now get lost." He didn't move, just stood there, his eyes reddening. When I stood on that rooftop, I thought I had lost the love of my life. I was so certain. But when I jumped, the only thing in my mind was you. You were waiting for me at home, waiting to have dinner together. Anna was just an obsession from my youth. Emily, you're the one I truly love. I let out a cold laugh. You love me? You loved me so much that the first thing you did after being reborn was to go running to Anna? You bought her cakes countless times. Yet on my birthday, you couldn't even make me a bowl of noodles. Is that what you call love? My voice was calm, but Ethan's face grew even paler. Pathetic, isn't it? I continued. Maybe people will always be trapped by what they couldn't have when they were young. But that's no excuse for the way you hurt me. Ethan shut his eyes in despair, his voice hoarse and caught in his throat. Emily, I know you hate me, but we've spent 10 years together. Please, give me another chance. Let's start over. Okay. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but all the anger and resentment from the previous life surged up at once. Why should I give you another chance? What makes you think you deserve one? I glared at him, my voice sharp. My biggest regret is wasting 10 years of my youth on you. When you were painting an entire wall of portraits of her, did you ever think about how I felt? When you donated all your assets to charity without a second thought? Did you consider what that would mean for me and our child? And when you jumped off a building for her, did you ever stop to think about how I or our child would survive?" Ethan's head dropped lower and lower until my last words made him snap his head up, his eyes wide with shock. "A child? We had a child." He stumbled forward a step, his face alight with the joy of a new father. "A boy or a girl? How old? Emily, tell me." Then, as if something clicked, his excitement faltered, his smile frozen. "I wouldn't know," I said flatly, my tone cutting. "I was 1 month pregnant when your beloved Anna and your dear best friend got me killed. Of course, I didn't know if I had really died or not. I only said it to hurt him, to drive the knife deeper into his heart." Ethan finally broke, dropping to a crouch with his hands covering his face, muffled sobs escaping his throat. I stepped over him and walked into my house, watching him sob uncontrollably through the rain-soaked window. I felt nothing but satisfaction. Good. The pain shouldn't just belong to me. Not long after, Ethan dropped out of school, while I was successfully accepted into the university through the direct admission program. A double victory, I'd say. When the news of my acceptance was announced, Quinn wanted to find Ethan to flaunt it, but he couldn't locate him. Unable to vent his energy, Quinn poured everything into studying, his grades shooting up like a rocket. 100 days of hard work. And now my dream school is my safety school, he declared proudly. After being accepted, I rarely went to school, only occasionally stopping by to drop off materials for Quinn and Nate. Nate joked about wanting to attend T University with me so we could have a campus romance. T University isn't something you can get into just by talking about it, I replied. Still, seeing someone work so hard to catch up to me touched me. I returned the sentiment by gifting Nate a complete set of exam prep books. "Emily White," he growled through gritted teeth. "You're out to get me." Without even looking up, I tossed another stack of practice exams his way. "Why stop at one set? Here, have 10 more. Think of it as extra credit." The next time I heard news about Ethan was a few months later. He had stabbed Anna and Quinn's friend, Keith, both of whom ended up in the ICU. The injuries weren't fatal, but neither had regained consciousness. The police spent 3 days searching for Ethan, but he had vanished without a trace. Alive or dead, teachers and classmates were horrified by his actions, but I wasn't surprised. He had always been unhinged. The police questioned everyone connected to him, including me. After my interview at the station, I returned home and was about to unlock my door when a cloth reeking of chemicals was suddenly pressed over my nose and mouth. Everything went dark. When I came to, I found myself on the rooftop of an abandoned building, my hands tightly bound to a chair. Ethan stood near the edge of the roof, dressed impeccably in a suit, his back to me. The cold wind swept through, stirring the dead leaves and sand on the ground. I had no idea what he was thinking, but I could feel the storm brewing. A wave of despair surged through me as I struggled against the ropes. Sensing movement behind him, Ethan turned around. Calmly, he lit the candles on the table. Only then did I notice the spread in front of me, dishes of all my favorite foods. Ethan sat down beside me, his meticulously handsome face half illuminated by the warm glow of the candles, the other half swallowed by shadow. What was he playing at now? "What are you trying to do?" I asked coldly, locking eyes with him. His lips curved into a gentle smile, but there was an unmistakable flicker of madness in his otherwise calm gaze. "Emily, have you forgotten? I still owe you a wedding anniversary." "A wedding anniversary? What utter nonsense. He's completely lost it." I stared at him, unblinking. "Let me go home. You can't hide me forever. It'll only be a few days before they find us." He ignored me, carefully ladling a bowl of soup. "This is our first anniversary," he said, placing the bowl in front of me. "I made your favorite, pork rib soup. Try it." I couldn't listen to any more. Cutting him off impatiently, I said, "Did you lose your memory? Should I help you remember?" His hand froze mid-air. "On our anniversary, you borrowed a camera to confess your undying love to Anna. You abandoned your wife and unborn child to leap from the 18th floor, hoping to reunite with her among the stars. Does that jog your memory?" My voice dripped with sarcasm. Ethan's eyes immediately reddened, and he reached out to pull me into his arms. His cheek pressed against the side of my neck as he spoke in a soft, cajoling tone. Let's just spend tonight together peacefully. Okay? No more talking about the past. He knew me too well. Knew exactly how to diffuse my anger. In the past, whenever he acted like this, I'd always soften and give in. But now, all I felt was disgust. I kicked the table hard. The wine bottle tipped over, spilling dark red liquid everywhere, soaking him completely. He didn't react. Didn't get angry. Instead, he raised a hand to gently caress my cheek, his dark eyes locking onto mine as if trying to etch this moment into his memory forever. Time is running out, Emily, he said, his smile faint, his gaze as deep and still as the night sky. What time? A sudden unease gripped me, and I instinctively leaned away from him. Don't be afraid, he murmured, noticing my movement. His voice carried a bitter edge. I won't hurt you again. I didn't believe him for a second. In the distance, the sound of police sirens broke through the silence. Relief washed over me. When I had gone to the police earlier, I'd asked them to put a tracker on me. Returning home alone was all part of the plan to lure Ethan out. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to my forehead, the gesture soft, almost like a farewell. I heard him sigh. Emily, how did we end up like this? How? Because of his own actions. If he hadn't been so obsessed with Anna, if he had taken responsibility from the beginning, maybe we could have been a happy family of 3. But there were no maybes. And I was glad for that. A sharp beam of light suddenly swept across the rooftop. I squinted against its brightness. In the next instant, several red laser dots appeared on Ethan's body. He stood up, looking at me with a mix of reluctance and calm resolve. Slowly, he took a step back. I lifted my head and met his gaze. There was no fear in his expression, only a strange relief, as if he had been waiting for this moment. My heart raced as a realization struck me. He knew this was a trap. He had known all along, and he never intended to escape. Ethan continued stepping back until he reached the edge of the rooftop. He stopped and smiled at me, a peaceful yet utterly despairing smile. Emily, he said softly, I'll atone for my sins with my life. No, I shouted, my voice cracking. Why do you think you get to decide everything? Ethan. But he didn't answer. The wind carried my words into the vast, empty night as he looked at me one last time, his figure framed by the cold, unforgiving darkness. Stop right there, I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. Why does he get to just end it all like this? I couldn't let Ethan escape so easily. He had hurt me, hurt others, and he didn't deserve the relief of death. His sins needed to be repaid. His remaining days should be spent repenting in prison. Emily, I love you. His soft voice carried through the chill of the rooftop wind, ruffling his disheveled hair. He leaned back slightly, and for a moment, I was transported to another time, a humid summer afternoon, the air thick and stifling, the old walls of the school building peeling with age. Ethan, a young boy then, tilted his head to look at me from under the whirring ceiling fan, a faint blush coloring his ears. His voice was clear and soft as he asked, Emily, do you like me? That memory vanished as quickly as it came. After the college entrance exams, our paths diverged. Quinn did well and went to S University in the neighboring city. We occasionally met during long breaks to catch up. Nate, however, fell short of the score needed for T University by a few dozen points. Though he could have attended another decent college, he decided to retake the exams instead. I sent him the latest edition of prep books, a full set, and he was so angry he didn't speak to me for 3 days. As for Anna and Keith, their injuries were too severe. Both ended up in vegetative states, with no telling when, or if, they'd ever wake up. Naturally, neither participated in the college entrance exams. College life for me was both busy and fulfilling. I tried many new things I had never experienced in my previous life. While I wasn't necessarily better or more accomplished than before, I was happy, and that was the rarest and most magical feeling of all. Despite the struggles and pain of my past life, it didn't stop me from falling in love with the world again. In my second year of college, as a club leader, I helped welcome the new students during orientation. A few bold freshmen approached me, asking for my contact information. I smiled politely and declined each of them. Then, a familiar voice called out, "You guys are hopeless. Watch and learn." I looked up, startled. Standing under the sunlight was Nate, leaning lazily against his luggage. His gaze cut through the crowd and locked onto mine. "Senior," he said with a teasing smirk, "want to date me? My dog can do backflips."